My name is Amanda. I'm 27 years old, and I live in a small 2-bedroom apartment in the back of Cypress Hill Gardens, a place most people forget exists. I'm not the flashy type. I don't care about designer bags or posting my life online. I just like peace, my cat waffles, and the smell of fresh coffee in the morning. Until last month, I worked at a chemical testing lab called Wistoke Analytics. It wasn't fancy, but it paid the bills and gave me purpose. I had been there for 5 years. I knew the ins and outs of every machine, every policy, and most importantly, I was the only one with an active federal license to operate and sign off on certain hazardous material reports. You couldn't process a thing legally without that signature, but that didn't stop them from pulling the stunt they did. It all started with a meeting invite. Monday, 10 a.m., department restructuring. That's what the email said. I didn't think much of it. Those happened every few months when corporate wanted to cut costs or shuffle people around. I even brought donuts to the meeting. I always try to keep things light, But when I walked into the conference room, I knew something was off. Nobody smiled. The HR lady, Shannon, was already there, eyes glued to the printed paper in front of her. My manager, Brad, wouldn't even look me in the eye. He kept scratching his neck and tapping his pen like he was waiting for someone to say what he didn't want to. Then she said it. Shannon cleared her throat like she was about to read my eulogy. Amanda, thank you for joining us. After careful evaluation, we've determined that your position has been deemed redundant. Redundant? I blinked. Yes. Due to recent changes in our operational structure and the new software we've implemented, we believe the tasks you are covering can now be redistributed more efficiently among other staff. I didn't speak. I just sat there, silent. My palms went cold. My chest felt like someone had tied a rope around it and was pulling tighter every second. You'll receive a severance package of $2,800 and continued health benefits for 2 weeks. 2 weeks? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I looked at Brad. Is this true? He didn't answer. I stood up slowly, collecting what little pride I had left in that moment. You're making a big mistake, I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. Shannon gave me a rehearsed smile. We wish you the best in your future endeavors. That was it. No thank you. No handshake. No acknowledgement of the nights. I stayed until midnight, fixing code errors in the toxicology reports. Nothing. Just redundant. I walked out of there with the box they gave me. A cheap brown one that looked like it had been used 6 times before. My mug, my notebook, a few pens, and a framed picture of me and my dad on graduation day. He had passed 2 years ago. That photo was the only thing that made me feel like I was doing something right. I didn't cry, not in front of them. But the moment I stepped into my car, I broke. I just leaned over the steering wheel and sobbed until my eyes went red. That evening, I sat in my kitchen, holding waffles on my lap, staring at the wall. The only sound in the room was the fridge humming and waffles purring. I pulled out my file folder, the one labeled Licenses and Certifications. I had kept it updated since day one. Inside was my federal license, still valid, still registered under my name, and still mandatory for all toxicology release forms in the tri-state region. A slow, cold smile crept onto my face. They had no idea. Brad thought he could let me go like I was some temp worker who did nothing but check emails. But he forgot, or maybe he never knew, that the reason Wistoke passed all their inspections, the reason they never got audited or fined, was because of that little plastic card in my name. They couldn't legally operate without it, and I wasn't about to tell them that. The next day, I updated my LinkedIn and quietly started applying to other labs. I didn't want revenge right away. I wanted the right timing. Besides, they'd figure it out soon enough. And they did, but not as fast as you'd think. At first, they probably celebrated. I bet Brad was all proud of himself, telling the board how he'd saved the company money and streamlined operations. Shannon probably filed my termination like she'd done it 100 times before, already wiping her hands clean. But I knew the system better than anyone. Once a licensed operator leaves, the license becomes void within 48 hours unless it's transferred or renewed through the appropriate channels. That transfer process takes a month, and someone has to actually qualify for it with exams, background checks, and field hours. Brad? He didn't even know how to run the centrifuge, let alone qualify. I waited 3 days. Then I called the state regulator's office and updated my records. Told them I was no longer employed by Wistoke. The clerk didn't ask many questions, just marked the file. And that's when the real trouble began. A week later, I got a call. It was Jamie, a lab tech I used to train. She whispered like she was afraid someone would hear. "Amanda, things are getting weird here. We had 2 reports flagged this week, and the system won't let us submit them without a license sign-off." I played dumb. "Oh, they keep asking me to override it, but I don't have the clearance. Brad's panicking." I sipped my tea, trying not to laugh. I said. Maybe they should hire someone with a license. They tried. Nobody's biting. The state flagged their location. Someone's coming in for inspection. Boom. Just like I planned. See, the thing about revenge isn't screaming or slamming doors. It's silence. It's watching the storm roll in while everyone else is still dancing in the sunshine. The inspection was scheduled for the following Monday. I didn't go near the building. I didn't send an email. I didn't say a word on social media. But that night, I received another call. This time it wasn't Jamie. It was Brad. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity got the better of me. "Hello." "Hey, Amanda." His voice was tight, nervous. The kind of tone you hear when someone's pretending to be calm, but is really standing on a pile of burning papers. I just wanted to reach out. Check how you're doing." I smirked. "Never better." That's good. That's good." He paused. "Hey, listen. I was wondering if you might be interested in doing some consulting work for us. Temporary, of course. Just while we sort things out." I didn't respond. "We could pay, of course. Your regular rate. Maybe even a bit more." The silence on my end stretched. "Amanda, we need your license. The inspectors." Click. I hung up. I sat there staring at my phone. And that's when I knew I had them right where I wanted. But things didn't stop there. The next morning, someone knocked on my door. It was 6:45 a.m. I peeked through the peephole. It was Shannon. HR Shannon. Hair messy. Dark circles under her eyes, holding a folder in her hand. And she wasn't alone. Behind her stood 2 men I didn't recognize, both wearing gray suits and blank expressions. What were they doing here? I didn't open the door, but I watched as they stood outside, pacing and talking, before finally sliding a sealed envelope under the door. Inside was a letter, one that would change everything, and not in the way they expected. I stood in the hallway holding the envelope like it was ticking. Waffles rubbed against my leg, but I barely noticed. My eyes were glued to the name, printed on the front in bold black ink. Amanda Blake. It wasn't just a letter from HR or some apology card. This came from a law office. I recognized the name in the top corner, Dawson and Colby Legal Advisors. Wistoke must have hired lawyers. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside were 2 sheets. The first was a formal request, asking me to return as a temporary consultant to facilitate transition procedures and avoid operational delays. The second page offered me a contract. They were offering $5,000 just for signing and helping them complete urgent certifications. I laughed, out loud. $5,000? They kicked me out like a pile of garbage, and now they were crawling back, offering a few thousand to cover the fire they lit? They really had no idea. I made some tea and sat by the window, thinking it over. Not about the money, but the move I'd make next. I wasn't going to just roll back in there and save them. No, this was my story now. They burned the bridge. Now they'd learn how cold it feels to swim alone. Later that morning, I called my old friend, Casey. We hadn't worked together in years, but she ran a smaller lab across town called Biotrace. "Hey, stranger," she said, cheerful as ever. "Hey, Case. You hiring?" There was a pause. Then she gasped. "Wait, are you serious?" I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "You're not joking, right?" "Amanda, Blake wants to work for me." "Just part-time to start. But yeah, I've got a plan." By noon, I had an interview scheduled. Not that Casey needed to interview me. She just wanted to make it official for the paperwork. I knew it was a sure thing. But before heading out, I took one last look at the envelope from Wistoke. I put it in the trash. At Biotrace, I signed a basic contract, nothing flashy. Just enough to register my license under their facility. That's all I needed. I didn't even care what they paid me. I told Casey to keep it low for now. What mattered most was that the license transfer was filed. And with that transfer, Wistoke was now fully and legally frozen. No lab in the region could file hazardous material reports without me, and my license was no longer tied to them. That afternoon, I updated the government database. It now listed Biotrace as the sole licensed facility in our district. It was official, final, untouchable. By that evening, I had 2 more voicemails from Brad and 1 text from Shannon. "Please call me. We can work something out." I ignored them. Let them sweat. But I wasn't just being petty, I had a purpose. See, Wistoke was more than a job for me. It was my starting point, the place where I built my name, my skills, my reputation. And they treated me like a paperclip. Replaceable. Disposable. They needed to understand what it meant to lose someone who mattered. That Friday, Jamie messaged me again. "Brad's losing it," she said. "We had another failed audit. 3 clients pulled their contracts. They're blaming me for not signing off." I told her, "Don't worry. Just keep your head down." She replied with a sad face emoji. I felt bad for her. Jamie was good. Honest. One of the few people there who treated me like a human being. Maybe, just maybe, she could be part of what I had in mind next. See, I wasn't going to just let Wistoke sink. I was going to build something better and take the best people with me. But before I could do anything else, Saturday morning hit me with an unexpected twist. I was in the middle of watching reruns in pajamas when there was another knock on the door. This time it wasn't Shannon. It was someone in a navy blue suit and a gold badge. "Miss Blake." "Yes." "I'm with the Department of Environmental Safety. We need to speak with you about your former employer." He stepped in and I offered him a seat. He looked tired. Not angry, just worn down. "We've received several complaints and flagged reports from Wistoke Analytics," he said. "Their facility hasn't been legally certified for 2 weeks." I nodded slowly. "I know. You're listed as the last operating license holder. Have you been contacted by them?" "Yes. They sent a letter. Tried to hire me back." "Did you accept?" "No." He scribbled something in his notebook. "Good," he said, surprising me. "Because if you had, you'd be tied to whatever violations they're about to be charged with." I blinked. "What violations?" The agent pulled out a small folder and slid it across the table. I opened it. Inside were copies of photos. Leaked chemical storage units, missing hazard labels, expired materials, mislabeled test results. "They've been faking records," he said. "At least for the past 10 days. Possibly longer." My stomach turned. I had wanted revenge, but not this. Not criminal charges. Not this level of recklessness. "They thought they could fudge the system long enough to fix things," he said. "But you made the right call walking away." He handed me a business card. "If you remember anything else, let me know." He left, and I sat there stunned. So this is what they'd become without me. Sloppy, desperate, dangerous. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst came that night. I was brushing my teeth when my phone buzzed again. This time it was Jamie. Her message was simple. "Amanda, they fire me today. Blamed me for the inspection." I froze. Then came a second message. "I don't know what to do." I stared at the screen, heart pounding. That was it. That was the moment. I could feel it, the anger, the cold fire building in my chest. They didn't just lie and cheat. Now they were throwing the one honest person under the bus. I couldn't stand by anymore. I opened my laptop, pulled up my business plan. A new lab, a new team, one that followed the rules, that respected people, that didn't cut corners. I renamed the folder, Clear Path Analytics. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was war. And the first battle? Taking their biggest client, the one worth $85,000 a month, the one I had brought in 3 years ago, the one who still called me the brains of the operation. The meeting was already scheduled for Monday, but they didn't know that yet, and neither did Stoke. Not until I walked through the doors of their biggest account, wearing a new badge, with Jamie walking beside me. Monday morning came fast. I was up before the sun, nerves buzzing through me like electricity. My little apartment never felt so small. I put on my best blazer, dark navy, sharp shoulders, paired it with clean slacks and a pale blue blouse. Nothing fancy, just enough to say, I mean business. Waffles tried to climb into my bag like he knew something was going down. I gave him a kiss on the head and whispered, "Wish me luck." Jamie picked me up outside. Her eyes were puffy, but she was dressed professionally. Gray suit, flat shoes, and her hair tied back tight. "You ready?" I asked. She nodded, though she didn't look sure. We drove in silence to the meeting. The building stood tall on 5th Avenue. White panels, sleek glass, and the name Mason Murphy Chemicals shining like gold above the double doors. Their lobby smelled like money. Clean carpets, polished tiles, everyone in suits. This was Stoke's crown jewel client, and I was about to walk in and take them from under Brad's nose. We checked in with the front desk, were handed guest badges, and led to a private conference room. Inside sat Marlene Cho, the head of research and development for Mason Murphy. I had met her years ago, during a rough project no one else wanted. We bonded over late nights and shared migraines. I always liked her. "Amanda Blake," she said, standing up with a smile. "I thought you moved to Europe or something. Brad's been avoiding questions." I chuckled. "Nope, still here. Just not at Stoke anymore." She raised an eyebrow. "That's what I was hoping to hear." Jamie and I took our seats, and I slid a folder across the table. Inside, our new proposal. Streamlined testing services. Same-day reporting. Hazardous material certification guaranteed, licensed, and legal. "And your license?" Marlene asked. I pulled out my card and set it gently on the table. "Transferred last week. I'm now the licensed operator at BioTrace. But that's temporary. We're building something better, Clear Path Analytics. Full lab launch in 60 days. She leaned back, impressed. "And you're here to offer us first access?" I smiled. "I'm here to offer you clean, accurate results without illegal shortcuts or shady backdoors." Jamie added, "And no falsified documents." That made Marlene pause. Her voice got quiet. "Are you saying Stoke's been submitting fake data?" I didn't nod. I didn't confirm. I just said, "I'm saying there's a reason I left." She understood immediately. Marlene stood and shook my hand. "Send me the full proposal tonight. If the numbers check out, we'll be in touch." It wasn't a hard yes, but it was close. And for now, that was enough. As Jamie and I walked out of the building, she looked over at me. "Did we really just do that?" I grinned. "We just cracked open the front door. Now we kick it wide." But our celebration was short-lived. That evening, I got a call from my old coworker, Phil. He was a quiet guy, handled lab inventory, barely ever spoke unless you asked him a direct question. But he liked me, and I always treated him like part of the team. His voice on the phone was shaky. "Amanda, you need to be careful." "Why? What happened?" "Brad's freaking out. After he saw you visited Mason Murphy, he flipped a desk." I blinked. How'd he find out already? One of their assistants must have told him. He's saying you stole company secrets. He's talking about lawsuits. I closed my eyes and sighed. Of course he was. Thanks for the warning, Phil. No problem. But watch your back, okay? Click. Lawsuits. Smear tactics. Typical Brad. If he couldn't beat you fair, he'd try to bury you in lies. I knew I hadn't done anything illegal. I hadn't signed a non-compete. I hadn't copied their files or poached anyone with promises. Everything I brought with me, knowledge, process, contacts, I had built myself. All in my head. All from scratch. But the truth didn't always matter when someone powerful was angry. That night, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. Just a name, Samantha M. Subject line, they did the same to me. I clicked it open. Inside was a long message from a woman who used to work at Wistoke. She was let go a year ago under the same claim, redundancy. She had quietly left, found a new job out of state, but heard about what happened to me through the grapevine. In her email, she said something that hit me hard. They do this to anyone they can't control. You're just the first one who scared them by fighting back. There was again that fire in my chest. I had tried to keep my revenge clean, smart, surgical. But Wistoke wanted to make it dirty. Fine. I could get dirty too. The next morning, I contacted a lawyer. A real one. Not like Brad's corporate clowns. Mine was sharp, quiet, and well-read. His name was Derek Owens, and he specialized in wrongful termination and corporate sabotage cases. I met him at a diner just outside the city. You've got leverage, he said after looking over the situation. They had no legal right to call your role redundant if you were the only licensed operator. He sipped his coffee. If they try to sue you, we hit back harder with a countersuit. My voice was firm. I don't want just money. I want them exposed. He smirked. Then let's collect everything. Emails, texts, voicemails, license transfers. If they move against you, we crush them. I liked him already. While Derek started building a wall around me, Jamie and I focused on building ClearPath. We found a spot, a small, empty unit in an industrial strip called Quarry Heights. No big names there, just mechanic shops and a couple of food wholesalers. But the rent was cheap, the zoning legal, and the neighbors didn't ask questions. It would take weeks to build the lab, but the permits were in progress and we had a solid plan. Things were looking up until Friday. That afternoon, I walked out of the temporary biotrace office to grab lunch, and there he was, Brad, leaning on the hood of my car, sunglasses on, arms crossed. He smiled like a snake. Well, look who's playing CEO. I didn't answer, just walked past him toward my car. He stepped in front of the door. You think you're clever? Running around like a little hero? You think those clients care about you? They signed with Wistoke, not Amanda Blake. I stared at him. Mason Murphy's about to change that. His eyes flickered. I'll crush your little project. You're not the only one who knows how to pull strings. I leaned close. Go ahead. Pull them. Maybe you'll strangle yourself in the process. He shoved a folded paper into my hand. See you in court. It was a lawsuit, filed under theft of intellectual property. My hands trembled. My pulse pounded. Brad walked away like he just dropped a bomb. And maybe he had, but he didn't know I had one of my own, waiting to go off. Because tucked in Derek's files was something Brad didn't know I had access to. A copy of a backdated safety report. One that he had signed. One with forged numbers. One that, if exposed, could end his career forever. And now the clock had started ticking. By Monday morning, Derek had torn the lawsuit apart. He called me from his office, voice calm but stern. There's nothing solid in this. It's a scare tactic, a bluff. I exhaled. They claim you took proprietary lab methods, but you didn't. There's no patent, no proof, and no non-compete in your contract. They're hoping you panic and fold. I didn't. I'd done too much folding in my life. This time I was standing tall. Derek continued, "Now, if you want to strike back, we've got options. But the forged safety report? That's the nuke. If we use it, there's no going back. That's career-ending stuff for Brad, and maybe a criminal case." I sat quiet for a long moment. I'd kept that report buried deep in a locked folder. It wasn't just dirt, it was the whole graveyard. Brad had signed off on a chemical waste disposal log that hadn't matched the actual output from our machines. I found the error during a random cross-check a year ago, flagged it, but he waved it off and told me he'd clean it up. He never did. That log, if submitted to federal regulators, could get Wistoke fined. Or worse, shut down permanently. I had screenshots, timestamps, and backups. Derek verified everything. "You don't need to use it yet," he told me, "but you hold on to it. It's your shield and your sword." Later that day, Jamie and I met with a local contractor to begin building out ClearPath's new lab space in Corey Heights. The space was rough, concrete floors, flickering lights, and a few rusted vents, but it had bones. It was ours, and that made all the difference. The contractor, a guy named Rudy, was rough around the edges but knew his stuff. "I can give you 2 clean rooms, epoxy floors, air scrubbers, and high-temp vents. Gonna cost you about $19,000. That was almost everything I had saved. I didn't flinch. "Do it." He nodded. 2 weeks. Maybe 3 if the filters take longer. Jamie looked around the empty room, wide-eyed. "It's really happening." "It is," I said. "They can't stop us." But that same afternoon, while we were walking to our cars, her phone rang. She answered, then went pale. I grabbed her arm. "What is it?" She hung up and whispered, "Brad just called me. He said, if I keep working with you, he'll blacklist me in the industry." I felt my stomach turn. "What did you say?" "I told him to shove it." We both laughed. A short, nervous laugh. But the threat was real. Brad still had influence. He still had people in his pocket. He could make things hard for us, get our equipment orders delayed, block permits, spread rumors. I knew the game, but I also knew his kind only held power as long as others were scared. And I wasn't scared anymore. That night, I sent an email to Marlene Cho at Mason Murphy with our final proposal and price breakdown. I didn't beg. I didn't undercut. I offered value, precision, honesty. The next morning, her reply came in. Simple, direct. "We're in. 90-day trial contract. Starts next week." Jamie screamed so loud she scared Rudy, who was hauling paint buckets across the lot. We had done it. We had landed the biggest client Wistoke had. But I didn't celebrate too hard, because I knew Brad, and I knew he wouldn't take this loss lying down. Sure enough, by that Friday, a new letter arrived at my door. This time, it wasn't from a lawyer. It was from the State Board of Licensing. Subject: immediate review of license transfer. Amanda Blake. I read the whole thing, mouth dry. Someone, clearly Brad, had filed a formal complaint saying I had improperly transferred my license and was operating outside proper authority. He was trying to get my license suspended, which would kill ClearPath before it ever launched. I forwarded the email to Derek, who responded almost instantly. "He's making a move. Time to hit back." The next morning, Derek filed a formal countercomplaint. Included were copies of the backdated safety report, photos of mislabeled chemical containers from a whistleblower. Jamie had taken some before she left, and evidence showing Brad's knowledge and approval of the falsified data. We didn't send it to the media. Not yet. But we sent it to the state board. And once they saw what was happening at Wistoke, they wouldn't just pause Brad's complaint. They'd open their own investigation. We didn't hear back for 2 days. 2 long, tense days. In the meantime, we kept building. Jamie worked with Rudy to set up the chemical storage areas. I filed the insurance. We ordered equipment, computers, and test kits. Every day brought progress, but every hour brought a shadow. And then the shadow exploded. It was a Tuesday morning. Cloudy skies. Jamie and I were unpacking lab coats and setting up the testing benches when my phone rang. It was Phil. His voice was shaky. Amanda, the inspectors are at Wistoke. I dropped what I was holding. Inspectors? The feds. State board. Hazmat. They've shut down the whole building. Brad's yelling. Shannon's crying. They're taking files, hard drives, everything. My breath caught. Did someone tip them off? I think it was your lawyer. But Amanda, they just arrested Brad. What? They put him in cuffs. I stood there, frozen. Jamie stared at me. I whispered, Brad's been arrested. Her jaw dropped. It had finally happened. The giant had fallen, and ClearPath's doors were just about to open. The news broke that afternoon. CEO of Wistoke Labs arrested for data falsification and environmental safety violations. It was everywhere, local business sites, LinkedIn chatter, even a short segment on evening news. Brad's smug face, now pale and panicked, was shown in a still photo from his arrest, being led out of the office in handcuffs. He looked nothing like the man who once stood in front of my car, sneering. I should have felt satisfied. I should have been celebrating. But all I felt was this quiet, powerful calm. We had done it. Not just taken a stand, but won. Jamie and I sat in the new lab space, still unfinished but finally real, and let the silence soak in. We were safe, and he was finally out of our way. But revenge wasn't just about payback. It was about rebuilding. And now, that's all I wanted to do. The day after Brad's arrest, the state board sent me an official email. No violation found. License remains valid. We apologize for the disruption. Attached was a short note from one of the board members I'd met years ago during a chemical training program. Glad to see someone's finally cleaning house in this industry. Keep going. That night, Jamie and I drove to the edge of Quarry Heights with cheap champagne and 2 plastic cups. We clinked to clear path, to new beginnings. And then the flood came. Mason Murphy's trial contract launched without a hitch. Their samples arrived weekly. We ran the tests ourselves, me in gloves, Jamie with the microscope. Long nights, coffee-fueled mornings. Then came smaller companies. 3 in the first 2 weeks. Then 5 more after word got out that Wistoke had shut down. By the end of the month, we had 12 regular clients. I had to hire 2 more lab techs, and then another admin. And just like that, we were a real company. But not everyone was celebrating. One day, 2 months into operations, I walked into the lab to find a note on our door. No name, no return address, just one line scribbled in sharp, shaky pen. You got lucky. That's all. I crumpled it and threw it in the trash. Because it wasn't luck. It was justice. And then, 3 weeks later, something happened that flipped my world again. I got a phone call from a lawyer. Not Derek. A new one. Hi, is this Amanda Blake? Yes. My name is Kelly Newton. I represent the estate of Dr. Gerald Reinhardt. My heart skipped. Gerald Reinhardt was the former founder of Wistoke, long before Brad bought out his shares. He'd vanished from the public eye after retirement and hadn't been heard from in years. I'm sorry, I said. Why are you calling me? She continued, Mr. Reinhardt passed away 3 months ago. In his final will, he left behind a sealed envelope addressed to you. To me? Yes. And inside was a copy of his original company license and a notarized transfer to your name. I stood frozen. You're telling me I now own Wistoke's original founding license? That's right. And under your name, you now have sole claim to any brand or assets not seized in the shutdown. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After everything Brad had done, after firing me for being redundant, after trying to take my license, my name, my future, I now own the founding rights to the company he stole from someone else. I whispered, why would he leave that to me? Callie replied. His note only said one thing. She was the only one who remembered that science is for the people, not for profit. I hung up in stunned silence. Then I walked out of the lab, stood in the parking lot under the sun, and let the wind hit my face. I wasn't just free. I was vindicated. And I wasn't stopping here. I met with Derek the next day and told him everything. We filed for legal protection of the original Wistoke license under ClearPath's brand. It gave us leverage, industry trust, access to special testing certifications, and even grant eligibility for federal research support. And with that, the final piece fell into place. Brad, meanwhile, had his court case pushed into the summer. He posted bail but couldn't get a new job. His reputation was mud. Half his old staff left the field completely. The other half, they came knocking on our door. I didn't hire all of them. Some had stayed quiet too long, but a few like Phil I brought in, because he'd risked his job to warn me. And I never forgot kindness like that. Months passed. ClearPath grew. We moved out of the industrial strip into a larger office downtown. We hosted seminars for college students, offered internships, and even held an open lab day for high school kids interested in science careers. One evening, I stayed late, reviewing test data when Jamie popped her head in. "You got a minute?" I looked up. "Yeah, what's up?" She stepped in, holding an envelope. Handwritten. No return address. I opened it slowly. Inside was a short note, scrawled and messy. It read, "I underestimated you. I shouldn't have. But now you've got what you wanted. Enjoy it. Just remember, power changes people. Don't let it change you." No signature. But I didn't need one. "Brad." I folded the note, slid it into my drawer, and locked it. Then I whispered out loud. It didn't change me. It revealed me. And that was the difference between us. Because in the end, revenge wasn't about destruction. It was about redemption. And while Brad sat in silence, hiding in shame, I stood tall, license in hand, future wide open. They fired me for redundancy. But I turned out to be the only one they couldn't replace.